Yeah, and it really becomes less emotional and more data driven, right? Because you can really like a trade because they're funny and because they always come in and make you laugh, but they can also cost you the most money in terms of delays and rework and everything else. And separating the emotion from the data has such an impact on the business that having those reports in front of you really make a big impact on the bottom line.
Yeah. Have you ever wondered how successful architecture, engineering, and construction companies scale their business?
Or have you ever wanted guidance on how to get more growth, wealth, and freedom from your AEC company?
Well, then you're in luck. Hi, I'm Will Forat.
And I'm Justin Nagel, and we're your podcast hosts.
We interview successful AEC business leaders to learn how they use people, process, and technology to scale their businesses.
So sit back and get ready to learn from the industry's best. This is Building Scale.
Hey listeners, it's Will here. Our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy. If you've ever listened to our show, then you know that the three pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology. So if you suspect technology is your weak link, then book a call with us to see where we can help maximize your company's IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
Today's guest is Thomas Berrington. He is the Chief Information Officer at French Brothers, where he's led technology strategy and operations since 2022. Previously serving as the Director of IT, Thomas has been a central piece to French Brothers' digital transformation, enhancing both customer experience and operational efficiency. In addition to his role at French Brothers, he consults with home builders nationwide, advising on technology strategy and development projects. He holds both his BBA in Information Systems and his MBA from New Mexico State University, along with multiple professional certifications. Thomas is an active member of IT and home building industry communities, continually pushing innovation forward. French Brothers is based in southern New Mexico and West Texas and is a production home builder focused on first-time home buyers. The company is a multi-time National Housing Quality Award winner, known for its commitment to customer experience and quality. And with all that said, Thomas, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It was a wonderful introduction.
Yeah, I'd love to say that it was all me. It was mostly AI. But, I put my own twist on it. So it's my AI, though, so that therefore, it gives a little bit more color. But I said all this fun stuff, but you tell us the real story. How did you get into the construction space and IT specifically in the construction space, and then tell us about French Brothers.
Yeah, so really it came from a transition out of the food service industry. I went back for my MBA and really was interested in technology more so than food service. As I was in my MBA program, French Brothers was looking for a data analyst program. They were early in their journey of adopting new technology and modernizing their reporting systems. They realized that they needed somebody in-house with that special skill set to be able to do that properly. So they approached the university, New Mexico State University, looking for a candidate. Luckily, the two of us connected. So I joined them as a data analyst at first, working to migrate them from Excel reports into Power BI and some dynamic reporting. And through that progression, I moved into a director of IT role and started taking on more strategic leadership roles, and as of 2022, took on the Chief Information Officer role, where I lead our kind of roadmap for technology strategy and operations.
Got it. French Brothers, tell us why, maybe before you were there, but tell us why that they had such a drive to go into the technology. Why, lots of companies, lots of construction firms out there are behind when it comes to that. So why were they so driven to really harness technology and innovation?
I think it was a desire. It was beginning to become popular within the industry. It was,
Sure.
Some firms were starting to do it, but also we've recently gone through an ownership change, and our younger leadership now has kind of been more focused on the data side of things. Kevin Jewell, our president, assumed that role while I've been with the company, has really been focused on that data-driven decision-making process, more so than our past leadership, where it's kind of been the old school, we have all of our napkins, we know what we're working on. We're kind of the hands-on business owners and entrepreneurs, whereas having kind of more of a business-oriented leadership, it's really been, let's focus on the data. How do we look at growth? How do we grow this company from what we've inherited, really, to the next stage.
So, I'm curious, how long have you been doing this for? Like 5 years, I think? How long have you been?
About 5 years.
So in that 5 years, what's been sort of the net effect from when you started actually implementing technology and leadership, obviously backing those changes and the costs that go along with it? What has been sort of the net effect for the business?
Yeah, absolutely. So when I joined with the company, we were doing about 150 closings or so that first year. And I think our head count was just north of 70 people, probably 75 people-ish. And a lot of those people were in our corporate office, preparing reports. There was more people on our purchasing team reviewing information. All of our builders had assistant builders to be able to maintain scheduling and everything else. And in the couple years since then, up until now, this year we'll do roughly just over 200 closings, and we have a head count just over 30. And so we've made tremendous reductions in headcount, being more efficient, having the data available to our entire team, and having a lot of those processes that were really just moving data from one system to another, having those automated and allowing alerts and automation systems to carry a lot of that workload.
So I'm just going to put that into math terms here for a second. 33% growth, right? If I'm doing my math right, 33% growth. And over the same period of time, reducing really the salary capital overhead or human capital overhead by like 50%. Is that about right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, and so really from a net effect also, profitability had to have increased. So why were you able to, what was the mentality of leadership where they went, yeah, we should invest more dollars? For most companies, especially in the construction arena, they go, well, if I spend more dollars in IT, I'm going to essentially take away from profitability. But obviously you're showcasing that that's not really true.
And I think it was really a learning experience for the business and for myself to see how we could benefit each other. When I came on, I came on in really a part-time role, and it was, how do we make this business better? I didn't have much experience in home building, so it was new to me. It took me a little while to understand the industry, really. But with that, I had a good understanding of how systems work and information systems in general. So our approach was really, let's look at the reports we're currently spending the most time on to generate and that most people are looking at. For us, it was scheduling information, where every home we were building at was at in the process. And at the time, it was very difficult. It was being stored in an Excel spreadsheet with no permissions or anything else. So if somebody went in there and modified it, it broke the whole day's report. It was something the first person in the morning had to run and generate so that everybody could see that day. It was a very manual process, and it took a significant amount of administrative hours to produce it every day. That was the first one that we migrated into a Power BI report, and with dynamic refreshing, we had it refreshing hourly at that point. So then not only was we freed up all of that administrative time to then be spent on operational tasks, but we also had data that was more valid because the velocity of refreshes was that much higher. So we had a more accurate reporting system moving it into Power BI. And just based on licensing cost and the amount that we saved on that single report, that really justified the cost of, okay, here's our cost of the Power BI service. We've already recouped that cost in this single report. As we start building more and more advanced reports, particularly on our production side of things and purchasing to look at VPOs, we've noticed significant increases in those performances. Our variance went from multiple percentage points a year. I think now we're just over 0.1% variance from budget. And that's having those more accurate reporting systems so that we can see not only homes that have completed, but we can see homes in the middle of the process. And adjust.
Whoa, hold on. Multiple percentage points of variance to less than 1.1% variance. That right there is like points of profitability. That right there is literally points of profitability. That just drops to the bottom line. Holy cow. Continue. Sorry. I just wanted listeners to understand just how big of an impact it can have.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, really what I like to say with our team is all I focus on is the visibility of that information. We have a phenomenal team that's been able to take the visibility of that information and turn it into action. So, from the Power BI perspective, all it really does is give you the visibility of the information. And if you build it correctly, you have the right information in front of your fingertips as quickly as possible, as quickly as it's generated. You still need a phenomenal team to then take that information and turn it into
So information, being able to get more accurate information way faster, and essentially without having the hiccups that happen every so often from the manual processes. Also, for those that don't know or have been living under a rock, Power BI is a reporting platform through Microsoft. It can connect to a lot of the different data sets, everything from Excel spreadsheets to like essentially custom applications, and just allows you to report, right? That's really what it comes down to. That's where the power is at. And then, so faster decision making. When you first started when you kind of started the journey, or when the company started this journey, were you and the company ready to just start making these changes to where you're at today? Was it all readily available where you could just start making these changes like snap of a finger?
Absolutely not. It was certainly a process to get where we're at. Building the reports would not take the 5 years. It was, as we've always said in our company, it's really flipping over the rocks and seeing what's underneath. Sometimes you find gold, and sometimes you find maggots, right? Sometimes it's so much garbage that you just turn that rock back over and you go, you know what, we'll deal with that later. We found ourselves, particularly production data, we're using that scheduling report as an example. We were looking at how long homes were taking to complete based on that data, and it was off. It was incorrect data. And we found that it was simply because some of our builders were not running their schedule. They were not entering it in midweek. They may be waiting until the end of the week and then going, okay, here's all the activities that completed throughout the week. Well,
instead of daily.
That's not the way our process was designed. I was kind of doing some background on your guys' podcast. I love your slogan, people, process, technology. And when one of those is failing, right, the whole business fails. So we found when that process was failing, we were able to use one of the other key components or one of the other key pillars to realize that. We were able to use technology to see that our people weren't following the process.
Super cool insight. And because of that, you had to fix things really on the operations side before you could get good data to report properly, right? So is that kind of how it worked?
Okay. Yeah, it's really just about cleaning up operations, making sure that we understand how those, what data is driving those reports, and then that our field understands where all of that information is being driven from, so that as they maintain their schedules more accurately, we started seeing more accurate data. We could identify where issues were in the home more accurately and put more effort into fixing those issues. Whereas before it was everybody was maintaining their own schedules and separate Excel spreadsheets or on their phone calendars or sticky notes or whatever else. And it was very hard to see, well, do we have an issue with a certain trade or with a certain milestone within the home? But having it pulling out of your system and using your system accurately, whether it's an ERP system or whatever technology you're using it accurately makes such a big difference.
Obviously there was some pain. You described one of the pain points, which is around, data was missing or the data was, we'll call it dirty. Were there other, we'll call it hiccups or work? Because reports are not as hard. It's just understanding what's the end goal you're trying to get to. What were some of the other missteps or stepping stones that you had to get to before you could sort of fully fledge and go, okay, now I'm getting really good data? What were kind of the major steps or major milestones that had to change in the company or otherwise to be able to get there?
So the first thing is really buy-in from leadership, buy-in from the top. As we were making the transition, obviously from one reporting system, which was Excel, into another one, which was Dynamic and Power BI, there were issues where one of the report was inherently different than the other one, and there was inaccuracies. Having that buy-in and working through those inaccuracies is really the first step, so that everybody was running off of the same information. Having those processes redefined, making sure that everybody in the organization understood where that information was coming from was kind of the next step in that. And then working to refine as we're identifying what the KPIs are, working to identify how we're managing those KPIs. If it's, what we've always looked at, if the data, if becoming more negative, ideally you want to focus on the problems. And that's when you're trying to solve problems. If the data you're looking at is inherently becoming more positive, then you want to start looking at, okay, what are we doing right? What can we maximize? What is our force multiplier, if you will?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Were there, as you were, what was some of the gold, if you will, that you uncovered as you were going through this, whether expected or unexpected?
I think one of the first ones would have been the VPO reports. We didn't realize how quickly having that visibility on pending purchase orders, and when our builders would go, hey, we need another bundle of 2x4s or something. And well, in the past, we would have just put that through. Yeah, that's building material. Okay, let's go ahead and buy it. Whereas now when we can see that's pending, wait a second, we've just revised the budget. We made sure we have an accurate material list and that pull-ups are accurate. There should be no reason we need extra material. Let's go back to the trade. Let's go back to our framers and make sure that they're not using, full sticks for every single cut, and that they're maximizing the material. And we were able to kind of identify, okay, there is some waste that doesn't need to be there. We don't need to be buying extra material. We just need to, work and educate with our trades a little bit better.
So then, all right. So then let me ask you this. Was the leadership, because there was a leadership change, but when you first went into this whole process, did you guys have the technical maturity to actually understand from your non-technical leaders, right? If you being the technical one, and at the time you were not in leadership, but eventually you did get there. Well, what about your non-technical? They had to have the buy-in to say, hey, we need to make these changes. And what we see a lot of times is that non-technical leaders, they have a hard time understanding, we'll call it the technical aspects or whatnot to get to where they want to have that return. Obviously, you may have had some big wins early on, which may have helped that. But how do you convince non-technical leadership to spend more dollars in technology?
Yeah, really, that was a challenge at the beginning. Luckily, myself and our president had a great connection, and it was really just kind of wearing down that stone, where early on it was, well, do we really need this? And there was some resistance. And I think I struggled we talked about it a lot on my communication of being too technical. I would talk like I was speaking to other CIOs in terms of Dataverse and architecture and everything else, where what I found I needed to do is bring it down to a level that made sense to the executives and really talk in business process and business management terms, being able to have them understand where if the data is in a single source and we're able to utilize a dynamic system, we have a much better insight into our data, and we have a much greater ability to pull information and to query the information that we need at scale.
So because I know that there are some technology listeners and technology leaders, specifically in the construction space, listening, and they have a problem all the time with communication with their leaders and going, man, if they could just spend more dollars here, the entire business would be better. How did you learn, or what was the type of communication when you first started versus today? Me, if you can, even some examples of like where you were having troubles, we'll call it communicating initially. And then how do you have those conversations today?
I think perfect example would be when we started looking into custom app development. Speaking to non-technical people about app development is very difficult. It's hard to, without making it sound like magic, to explain how the application is going to work, how we're going to build our own inspection app, let's say. And well, where does the information live? How do people get to it? How are we going to make sure that the builders only have access to their correct homes? And a lot of times it really does sound like magic to somebody who's non-technical when you start talking about, relational data and having row level security or column level security and role-based access. Very quickly, you just get the blank stare.
The jelly donut stare.
Yeah.
Where your eyes glaze over and they say, but they don't really understand.
Yeah, they're just hoping that at the end of the day, they see the results and they can just stop listening. We used to joke that, I needed an easy button, that when I would talk and you'd start getting that, somebody was just whenever I was in meetings, let's have an easy button. So when Tom starts talking, we'll hit the easy button and you can bring it down a level so that we can all understand what he's talking about.
That's amazing.
There was, I remember one specific meeting where at the end of it, I talked probably 15 minutes about what we were trying to do on building our own inspection app and our own design inventory app. And at the end of it, half the room was glazed over looking at me, and one of our owners, Tom French, he said, I have no idea what the hell you just said. It sounds really cool. I can't wait to see it, but I have no idea what you just said. And I think a lot of times that's really how it ends up going, right? It's really hard. You have to get the buy-in. You have to really, Simon Sinek says it great, start with the why, where here's why we're moving to this. We want to have a greater control on our processes and on our data. Starting with that, business owners and business leaders understand that mentality. That's why we're moving to custom app development. All of the underneath and the tools and stuff that you're going to be using, that's really for me and my team to worry about. For them, it's, well, why are we doing this? What is the benefit to the business? And it allows us to control those processes, to have better ownership of our data, and to grow the business in our own way versus, kind of being stuck in the updates of third-party software.
When you're going through this, and this is probably a good example, are you combating the idea of a third-party app that exists? And then also, are you combating, like, couldn't we just have a form? Like, couldn't we just have like a PDF form or even like a Microsoft form? And you're saying like, no, we need an app comparatively. And they're saying, I don't understand why. Is that the fight that you're having?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, a lot of times it's, why can't we just do this simply? Mm-hmm. Or they'll come to me, hey, I have this problem. I'd really like to do this. And you start getting into the, let's identify what this solution needs to be. And it very quickly becomes, is this too many questions? You know what? I'll just do it in Excel. Don't worry about it. I can do it myself. And it's again, getting to that, having them understand the why and having them understand the reasoning for putting it in an app or putting it in a relational database connects the information so much more, so that right now I wouldn't say we're utilizing AI to its fullest extent, but we have it in our roadmap. And by moving that data into a centralized data lake where AI can be leveraged on, down the road, we'll be able to answer those questions a lot quicker versus having these kind of data siloed forms that are stored separately from the rest of our information. So here's why we need to do it a little more complex to begin with, because down the road, it will provide valuable insight. And I think for businesses in general, that the information they're storing and the data they have is becoming more and more valuable.
That's right. So I'm not going to speak too much on the AI conversation, but just because I heard it and we do speak about this stuff, I have to bring it up. So the parts that a lot of non-technical leaders don't understand is that whatever habits that they formed and their company essentially formed in bringing in the data, right, might not be the way that it has to be in order to produce results that you're talking about. They have to go through this process of structuring their data in a way that, we'll say, machines, right, can understand it so that eventually humans can understand it. And so, and typically there's some centralization. What's your source of truth is usually a question that has to pop up, because inside of the business, you may have sort of silos of information that happen, or a replication sort of a replication of data, except that it's not one-to-one, meaning that human error is introduced because we're copying data from one place to the other, or there's error because someone fat-fingered something, or something isn't lining up in such a way so that it just makes sense, or the system breaks, right? And so your historical data, right? So been in business for many years. Does it make sense? Did you guys use all your historical data to build up what you have today? Or did you say, you know what, maybe there's a limitation to where we don't, and we start with a new process? How did that go?
Yeah, for us, it really was finding that, where's our break point? Obviously, for most businesses, processes change. We had gone through numerous processes, which made trying to build reports on old data very, very difficult. We decided that, and especially as the home industry had significantly changed from COVID, 2020 was really our year. That it was a year before I got there. It wasn't too much to go back to correct some of that past data. So we would at least have some historical data to look at, but then we would move forward from there and not try and look too far back, but at the same time, we'll spend a little bit of time to spend a little effort to clean up that data, so we'd have some historical data when we first started building the system. But yeah, like you say, it ends up, especially for businesses that have been in business for a long period of time, unless you have very clean documentation on when all these processes were in place, which is pretty rare. It's a nightmare for your technology or analytics team to be able to build reports that span the entire history of your company.
So you only really started the process where you only took a year's worth of data. You didn't go back any further.
Right.
Is that okay? So that might be easy in home building because my assumption, correct me if I'm wrong, my assumption is your build cycles are really no more than a year in length. Very rarely does it go beyond 1 year. Would that be fairly accurate?
And really in home building, we're at 90 to 120 days.
Yeah. So everything's done in the same year. Was there, now that you have more years of data, do you get rid of the old data or do you keep a length of it?
So we're just starting to tackle that problem now with some of the data. And I think home building in general, it probably doesn't create the same volume of data that some businesses do, right? In terms of transactions, there's not hundreds of thousands of sales. There's the sale of the homes, there's 150 to 200 transactions. It's a lot of date-based data, but in general, the volume of data is not all that high. So we haven't really had to aggregate it very much. Now, some of the purchase order data, that stuff that I don't think past 5 years, it makes sense to go back and look to see if we had a PO to our concrete trade. Knowing how long that home took to build or the total cost of it, we'll store all of that information, but we won't store individual POs. We're beginning to aggregate that information and just store the total cost of the home. Whereas for the first 3 years, while it's under warranty and while we may still need to reference some of that information, having that very granular data makes sense. But as you start getting out of the scale where you're never going to be looking at it, it really does just start tying up storage space. And that ends up being a kind of the hidden cost that most businesses don't look at because they're going, well, you can just buy more storage. And it's, we can be efficient with it. And we can kind of have a lean mentality of what don't we need to store. And we have the most efficient data storage that we can have because we've aggregated our data to just what we need.
Okay. Besides Excel spreadsheets, where all are you pulling data from and putting into Power BI?
So the main place that we pull data from is our ERP system, which is a specific home building. We use ECI's Mark systems, which is phenomenal to pull data out of. We're also pulling it from our CRM system, HubSpot, as well as a lot of external data. We've connected to Realtor.com. They have some public MLS data that we can pull for prospecting new communities and new cities. Zillow does the same. We've also begun pulling some information, again, out of the Microsoft cloud for all of our business applications so that we're tracking all of our inspections, homes that have inventory items in them, all of that kind of business information.
Wait, so you said ERP data. Don't the ERP systems have their own reporting? Why pull it into Power BI?
So they do. And the reason we actually evaluated their reporting systems, the reason we use Power BI is it's so universal. Most of the time when you have an ERP system or even our CRM, they have the reporting system built in as well. It's just very difficult to then pull the external data into those systems. So you end up having to go from your ERP systems reports to your CRM's reports to external reports, and having it pulled into a single reporting system, which is really all the executives are looking at. They're not in the actual functional systems. They're just looking at the reports. Having that just built in a Power BI system, that then becomes kind of the single application that your executive and mid-level managers really need. They don't need the functional programs as often.
Okay. So make a valid case for, why maybe even though the ERP system. So for anyone that's looking at ERP and looking at the reporting modules, there may be a reason, that you just need the data and not necessarily pay for the reporting modules. You might have more. When you said, I think you used the term more global reporting. Is that what you said? What does that mean?
It allows us to really pull information from any data source. It allows us to publish it from within the Power BI service, which we find very powerful. Our reports load to iPads. Our president travels solely with an iPad, and he feels he has full visibility on the company through Power BI. He can look at any home in the company, where it's at in the schedule, what our financials are, up to the date. He feels very comfortable traveling, whereas in the years past, it's just that visibility of information. We just haven't had that same visibility to where traveling, it really felt like, okay, I'm leaving the company to go do this versus now where I have the ability to travel with the company still at my fingertips.
So, all right. So you're taking it from these different systems. Just scheduling was a major problem that you used essentially from to sort of use Power BI to solve. You said you also use HubSpot. Is there a combination of data between HubSpot and ERP data that somehow gets used, whether it's in metrics or something like that? Or is it just separate silos? It's just a single place to go for all your reports?
No, we have begun combining. I say begun. We've combined a lot of information between HubSpot from our sales information to our ERP system to actually look at what we're building. Just things like, how many communications the customer had as a customer, looking at how that translates into the number of warranty requests or how much outreach there is post close. So we can kind of establish a deeper customer profile by combining that information together.
So, and from there, you can actually then create metrics that would be, we'll say, harder to create, or be able to start making decisions on, let's say, who would be a better client because of that data, or improve communication. Is that how that would be used then?
Yeah, absolutely. It creates that feedback loop. It allows our sales team to identify, to adjust their processes and identify maybe the clients they're pursuing. Are we finding that our customers, first-time buyers, have more warranty issues, and maybe that's an opportunity for education? Are we finding that our move-up buyers have more warranty customers, and that's because they're familiar with home ownership and they know what to look for? It provides that insight into where are we seeing how we can improve that customer experience as a customer.
So how do you go to decide when it's appropriate to use the third party like a HubSpot or your ERP compared to developing a system yourself?
Really looking at the complexity of development. I think software development, the speed of software development has really accelerated in the last few years. So spinning up a solution is significantly faster than it has been in the past. But there are still some that have tremendous complexity. ERP systems, CRMs that have a lot of data scraping and APIs built into them. The development hours that would go into developing a system like that and maintaining a system like that, for the cost of subscriptions and licensing with the third-party solutions, there's really not a benefit to trying to replicate that. They've done it so well. They're hyperscaled at this point to where it just makes sense from a cost perspective to use those large solutions. It's a lot of times it's kind of the one-off solutions from third-party solutions that do a single solitary task that's pretty easy to replicate within a custom app solution that you can kind of reduce those licensing costs pretty easily.
And then what about, so obviously Power BI, looking at the executives being able to have that, one pane of glass, to be able to see everything. It makes a lot of sense. What about the rest of the team? How are they adapting to using new technology if it's developed by you or if you're going to market to get it?
Yeah, so and that's actually another driving factor of why we've moved to apps and moved away from Excel spreadsheets. It's understanding kind of the current workforce, right? We're not hiring the boomer generation that is technologically illiterate anymore. We're hiring Gen Z and Gen Alpha that have grown up on cell phones and smartphones and apps and TikTok and everything else. So having processes built around custom apps, it helps our hiring, it helps our recruitment. It serves as a recruitment tool because people look at us and we're not a builder where you're coming to work with a hard hat and a hammer. You're coming with a smartphone and some apps and technology, and you're really able to utilize that technology to complete the job, to update the trades and update the rest of the office so they feel comfortable in using that technology more so than some of the old technology, where it was text-based and calling in to update, hey, this trade completed this, move on to the next task. Now we have apps that automate all of that stuff, and we've found that it allows us to recruit a significantly younger and more capable workforce.
Okay. I mean, that makes a ton of sense for the in-office people. What about the trades that you work with? Is that obviously the data, your systems are as good as the data you get, right? As you mentioned earlier. And when you have, if it's a trade that's something subbed out to, or if it's trades that you have underneath you, like how are they interacting? Because in generally, historically, not the most technologically advanced workforce by any means. So how are you gaining that data from the field?
Yeah, so that's and I think it's trade base in general within the industry is typically not very technologically advanced. Most of the times they're still using flip phones and it's all phone based communication. We've found by having the technology in front, at least for our trades or for our builders, it allows us to have the conversations with trades and be able to pull up information on them and have honest conversations, as needed and as quickly as possible. So if we have trades that are taking longer than they should, we can immediately pull up and show them the effect that has on the overall build cycle by missing their completion date by a single day, or by having any rework on a home that can require 3 or 4 additional days and push a closing. So it allows us to provide that information a lot quicker. Obviously, having a lot of our documents and a document managed system in the cloud, it allows us to have iPad-based documents and plan sets that we can refer to. So our builders and really our trades are never at a job site without the availability of documentation to see what they're working on.
Man, rework, one of the most hated words in the industry, but from a client experience perspective, from preventing rework, better data can ultimately affect client experience by reducing or removing rework. Let's say not 100% of the time, but it can reduce it, right? But if the trades that are outside of, let's say, your control, are you training them on your systems to be able to sort of be able to get that data? Or is it more, this is sort of proving what we had been saying all along? Like, how are you using it to specifically with your trades?
With our trades currently right now, we only house it internally. We haven't exposed the reporting system externally yet. And that's simply due to licensing costs. We do have that plan to where we would have vendor available information where they'd be able to review that. But currently we just have it as quarterly reviews for our trade partners, or as they're coming to us looking for either more work or price adjustments. We're able to review variance information, scheduling exceptions. We have really a vendor report card that we can pull up very quickly and show the number of jobs that they've worked on, how that's performed to budget, number of warranty submissions related to that home, and really quickly be able to provide them a great insight into how they've performed as a trade.
Very powerful to have your data at your fingertips like that.
Yeah, and it really becomes less emotional and more data driven, right? Because you can really like a trade because they're funny and because they always come in and make you laugh, but they can also cost you the most money in terms of delays and rework and everything else. And separating the emotion from the data has such an impact on the business that having those reports in front of you really make a big impact on the bottom line.
That I would totally agree with that. What do you wish you had, from this whole process, what steps do you wish you would have taken if you had to do it all over again? What steps do you wish you had taken? Sort of improve, if you will, the process, or improve getting to the end result?
I think looking at the architecture a little bit more at the beginning, kind of the structure of the data would have had a greater impact, especially on our custom applications. I find now our data is just not set up as efficiently as it could be at times. Some of the other stuff obviously would be looking at really structuring naming conventions as you're building out your data within, whether it's an ERP system or a CRM. Thinking about the logical naming conventions and how that data relates has such an impact to whether you can use built-in features or whether you're customizing a standalone solution. And what we found is if we were using a standard solution and had a significant number of customizations in it, then we probably need to be looking at, well, do we just need to do this custom? Because if we have to go through a significantly more labored process to enter the custom fields, it doesn't make sense to do it in this interface. It makes sense to do it in our own custom interface. So spending the time on that at the beginning and having a better understanding of where we're trying to go on the roadmap with it whether it's growth mentality, whether it's looking to maintain and become as efficient as possible. I think both of those have different strategic mindsets in terms of how the architecture of the data will go.
Anything else?
I think having more education to the rest of our team about solutions being built and building from the ground up tends to have a greater impact and tends to have better buy-in than I think we've struggled with in the past of at the top going, I don't think we have a great solution on this. Let's build a solution, and then pushing it kind of waterfall down and pushing it out versus working with our builders and with our production personnel and salespeople going, okay, show me where the pain points are currently, so that as we're developing this, we're developing it, for you. I think a perfect example of that would be when we were developing our inspection app. For me, I was going, okay, I've heard that our field personnel have iPads, so I developed our inspection app to be based on an iPad. And as we were demoing it, every single person that went to use it pulled out their phone. And I said, well, when we do an inspection, we don't walk around with iPads. We just have our phone out to take pictures. So then we had to go and completely change the layout of the app to be, it still had the iPad as a backup if they were doing that way. But the majority of people were phone based. So we were on the completely wrong mindset from the get-go. We should have worked with them at the beginning. Go, okay, how are you planning to use this process? Now let's build our solution around the actual use case.
So when you say reviewing processes, you literally mean like, okay, take me through this and show me, rather than an overview of whatever the documentation or whatever you kind of know. You're saying trust, but verify what's actually happening out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't show me a lucid chart of a timeline of how this goes. I can make those notes myself. You will inevitably make a better solution, really doing a Gemba walk, right? When you put yourself in their shoes, walk the actual process and see what's going on in the field. What is the Japanese mentality of go see for yourself, right?
Yeah, no.
Even order of what happens, right? You could change order in what comes up in the app based upon like, oh no, they always start in the bathroom. I don't know, whatever it is. And it's like, well, put that shit first. Like, that just makes a lot of sense. So if you're actually there perceiving it firsthand, compared to it generally works like this. Those are very different results that you get in the long run.
Yeah, that's a great point. We've organized our inspections to work clockwise around the home specifically for that, so we can look at, it reduces the number of steps within the home. Mm-hmm. But then rather than having it, I think when we first designed it, it was the inevitable, we'll just sort it alphabetically, right? Or however the checkpoints were created. That's how it shows up in the home. But then we found our quality assurance and inspection people were having to do a star pattern through the home. And it was just an excessive number of steps versus, okay, let's come in, let's start from the exterior, work clockwise around the home, move inside and work clockwise that way. We're missing less checkpoints. You're not pencil whipping or just going through because you're going, I think I saw that. Yeah, that looked right. You're in front of it. And it's just a more efficient inspection process.
Well,
and that instills the process of like, this is how French Brothers does it. Somebody else may do it differently, but this is how we do it. We start in the home and then we go external. We start externally and then go in the home, and we run it this way every time, because then how do you train the next to do that? It's all one seamless process that then has that technology backend to support the process itself.
So just make sure that whenever you expand into Australia, that you're going counterclockwise because they're upside down there, right?
Yeah.
At least that's my understanding.
Yeah, you always go the way the toilet flushes, right?
Yeah, the toilet flushes differently. That's the whole thing, right?
What do you wish? So taking some steps, but you did most of the work really yourself. Do you wish you'd used any consultants, whether for setup or any part of the process?
Yes, and actually we've just started using a phenomenal consulting firm as well to kind of help realize that we rushed into things and did not know what we didn't know. So having that expert to kind of back us, and we know we want to do custom reporting, we know we want to do custom app development, but having that subject matter expert in the background to be able to go, okay, think about these things prior to getting into it, because some things take a lot more rework, has started making a tremendous difference as well. It's allowing us to kind of optimize our environment and as I was talking about on our roadmap to AI, it's progressing us on that a lot faster than we would have been.
So when you say optimize, what does that actually mean? To the non-technical folks that are out there, what does that actually mean?
For us, that means single source of truth data. We're not replicating data in multiple places. We have very efficient updates. There is no stale data. If we change roles or if we change a process, we very rarely have failed automations just because of that, because of those optimizations and being able to use environment variables rather than calling out specific users and that kind of setup stuff without getting too technical.
Okay, definitely started going on the technical. Hopefully,
Where's the easy
no one
button?
glazed off.
Get the easy button out.
Yep. Hopefully, no one glazed over like a jelly donut.
Yes, this has been a ton of technical, fun business questions here, but we have one last question we want to ask you, Thomas, and we asked to everybody. So now that you're a giant building scale fan, you'll probably know this is coming. But Thomas, if you go back 20 years, what advice would you give yourself?
Oh, I would give myself a lot of advice.
Well, let it rip. Let's hear it all.
Yeah, primarily I would say, stick with technology. I was at a very young age, very interested in it, and stay innovative. Continue to push what is currently being done. Learn how you can use new technologies. It's one of the few things that I don't think a lot of other industries have changed very much, or a lot of other departments have changed very much. Building stuff, you're still doing the same stuff. Selling still requires the same connection. Technology has progressed more than any other industry or any other department. And staying up on current technology, continuing to learn new, has benefited me recently. I think there was definitely a period of time where I got a little lax with that. And I'm kicking myself now. I just feel like if I had stuck with education and stuck with learning, who knows where I'd be now.
Well, it looks like you're in a pretty good spot, even without that. So kudos to you and all the stuff that you and French Brothers have already achieved.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. This has been a ton of fun. If somebody wanted to get a hold of you, what's the best way for them to do that, Thomas?
They can connect with me on LinkedIn. My profile is on there at Thomas Berrington Innovates, linkedin.com/Thomas Berrington Innovates. For those in the building industry, if you're attending the International Builder Show this coming February, I'll be moderating a panel there as well, and I'd love to connect. I also have Microsoft booking link. Feel free to reach out. My email is thomasb@frenchbrothers.com, and we can set up a demo to do Power BI demo as well as custom application conversations.
Awesome. And is there anything else you'd like to tell the people before you say goodbye?
Stay innovative.
Love it. This has been a ton of fun, listeners. And until next time, adios.
Adios.
Thanks for listening to Building Scale. To help us reach even more people, please share this episode with a friend, a colleague, or on social media.
Remember, the 3 pillars of scaling a business are people, process, and technology.
And our mission is to help the AEC industry protect itself by making technology easy.
So if you think your company's technology pillar could use some improvement, book a call with us to see how we can help maximize your IT and cybersecurity strategy. Just go to buildingscale.net/help.
And until next time,
Keep building scale.
Scale.